Okay. So the third Triple X film is again directed by DJ Caruso, stars Vin Diesel, Ruby Rose, Donnie Yen, and again Samuel L. Jackson, along with a few other co-stars that we will get into later on. This film surprised me a lot. It was arguably better than the first two films. And personally, I have seen the first movie, which was okay. I did like the newest one a bit better, and I only saw, I think, like 5 minutes of the second one. So, I can't really compare it to the second film, but I would say it's better, or at least my favorite of the Triple X movies so far. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I laughed out loud a lot of times, and even at some of the really bad scenes, which there are some really, really bad scenes that don't need to be in this film. But we are going to talk about those scenes, which scenes I liked, the things I did like about this film, and what I didn't. And we're just going to talk about those things without giving anything away, because there are a bit of a few surprises in this film that I don't want to share in this review, because it is a spoiler-free review. And then also, it's pretty much like if Mechanic and the Fast and the Furious movies had a baby. That's what this film would be. So, Triple X, Return of Xander Cage. Let's get into it. So this film is filled with cheesy one-liners, cool action scenes that are way too long, that are way too outlandish and fun, but it also proves that Vin Diesel is the best James Bond out there. The movie doesn't flaw with its score, or even some of the acting, or the huge cast that DJ Caruso has built for this franchise. It's the writing, and in each and every film, the writing just kind of gets worse and worse and worse, but with this one, it was surprisingly better. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use for all the dialogue in this film, but it was just it was better. I cared more whenever people were talking, or whenever someone was being interrogated. I felt more for the character being interrogated, or I cared a little bit more about the story. I was a little bit lost because I didn't, like I said, I didn't watch the second film all the way through. I started it but never completed it, so I was kind of confused on a few things. I'm not sure if they mentioned anything from the second. I think they did, especially like when dialing 9 and all of that. But besides that, there wasn't really much to be confused about. It was mainly just the fact that the writing in this film is very, very flawed. And that's what bothered me about this trilogy. It's just, it lacks substance and character development. But the good thing about this franchise is that it's not aimed towards that. It's aimed to be just a fun film where you can laugh at the jokes that aren't funny. You can laugh at the very cool action scenes that are over the top, and you can just enjoy yourself and laugh out loud. And that's what I did. And I did see it with Brendan and a few other friends, and I thought it was very funny. I thought it was very well done, and I surprisingly had a good time. So those are a few things that I did like about the movie. I'm going to get into a few others before I start talking about some of maybe the bad things about this. So some things that lack in this film are definitely its characters. Some of the characters in this film just annoyed the hell out of me, and really made me question why I was sitting there in that theater on my 18th birthday going, this is what I'm watching? Like, I could have seen Split or The Founder, and this is what I chose to watch. So, yes, maybe not the best choice. Sorry, I don't know what the hell is wrong with my hair. Maybe not the best choice of film, but it's one that I had a fun time with, and one I'm glad that I saw, because if they do make a fourth film, I think I would see it and enjoy watching it. But basically, back to what I was saying, you've got the characters that are really dumb, really stupid. They say the same things over and over again. Basically, there's this one girl in the film that, like, is obsessed with Vin Diesel's character as Triple X. Like, right off the bat when you meet her, she's falling in love with, like, his muscles, how he looks, his looks, pretty much, which I think I just said that, but yeah, like, she just falls in love with him immediately, because she's kind of like the gadget girl. Like, she knows all about the weapons, and, just, you know, she's like the arsenal for the Triple X team that he builds. And what kind of made me mad, though, was that she's in charge of all of that, but then she hates weapons. So it's kind of, you know, conflicting and contradicting, but I get it. It was for that character. She's supposed to be that way, so it didn't bother me as much. I just sort of laughed whenever she said anything, or when she was doing something really cool. towards the end of the film. So I mean that was one of the few character flaws that I had with this movie, but I did enjoy her character. I did enjoy every bit of dialogue that she had between her and Vin Diesel. I thought it was very funny, and I embraced her character even though I didn't like her as much as I may have wanted to. But pretty much you have the team that Triple X builds that only he trusts and nobody else on the team does. Basically, every character in this movie is shady. If you think this character is doing something, the character's really got plans or an agenda for something else, and that's something you got to look out for because this movie is predictable, but it's not at the same time. It's more like the characters are predictable, but then you don't know which scenario of that predictability is gonna be solved. So what I'm trying to say is, you know this character is going to do something, but you don't know if it's going to be something else or what you thought it was. So, I mean, you got to kind of go back and forth between those characters and the things that they do in this film. But that's basically it for some of the characters. Besides that, it's your standard Triple X film with the same old characters you got from the first two films. Now it's just with Vin Diesel that's back. Another thing is that the characters in this film don't know how to choose sides. Like, there's two different sets of, like, teams, I guess. But basically there's these people coming after this thing called Pandora's box, and they all want it, and they're all trying to get it to either two things. One, stop satellites from falling from the sky, because that is what the bad guys are doing, and that is what they're trying to stop. Or they're trying to make the satellites fall to harm citizens and people that live in the area where the satellite's going to fall. So there's two different teams. I think there might be three, actually, but I think there's just two. Basically, though, the two teams go after Pandora's box, but the bad guys obviously try to stop the good guys, and the good try to stop the bad guys as they go and try to find this box that they so desperately need to stop the satellites from falling. And the first half of the movie is just that. It's seeing the two sides try and get this thing that they need. But then the second half is like they team up and they work together, and it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the first half. Like, I mean, I get it. It was cool to see both of them working together towards the end of the film, but it kind of made me mad a little bit, but it made for some really cool action scenes. I would have liked to have seen at the end both teams fighting the third team, and it would just be an even bigger war, so to speak. And I thought that would have been really cool. But they didn't. They just made them two stick together and fight, and that was cool too. So I wasn't disappointed. I just wanted maybe a little bit more from it. Another thing is, I guess you can't really call this a porn movie, but I mean, it's in the title, Triple X, right? So there's a scene where, and this doesn't give away anything, it's just about the character, Xander Cage in itself, but he basically at one point has an orgy with like 5 girls, and just to get information, but then he just kind of stays there, and I was like, okay, that's something, Triple X would do, so I get it. It's a very over-the-top film, and it's supposed to be that way. But it was just kind of annoying to see that, but it was cool. I laughed. I thought it was funny. But it was just kind of random. That's the thing about it. It was all random. He basically flirts with every girl that he is introduced to, and not just to get information out of them, but just because of the fact that he can, and he knows that they're gonna do the same thing, fall in love with him eventually, and I guess that's a perk of being Triple X, but I don't know, it was just kind of repetitive and kind of annoying at one point, but it's a character flaw, but I mean, it didn't bother me too much. I just wanted to put that out there as one of the things that kind of made me a little bit annoyed about this film. And then there were also some really pointless scenes as well that didn't need to be in there, that dragged on for way too long. I guess you can say it was for character development, but not really. It was just kind of to make the movie longer. Personally, I thought it would have been better as a 2-hour film to maybe get more of that character development in, but again, it would have been too long of a film at that point, and would kind of defeat the purpose of being a 2-hour film, because it didn't need to be. So, there's that as well, and then also, as we were walking out of the movie, there were people saying that this film was sexist, objectifying women, and I mean, it does do that, yes. You can say the movie's sexist. I don't think that's what they were trying to do with the film. I think it's just in the character itself that makes him like get all the girls, and because that's what comes with the job. And I think that's what they were trying, the vibe that they were trying to give off. Not so much that it was sexist, but just that it's the character and he can do all these things because of who he is. And I think that's what they were trying to do. But yeah, it was just the way the characters were introduced was really stupid, but it was also really funny, and I'm going to talk about that really quick. So there was one more funny thing that they did in this film. Whenever they would introduce a character, they would like freeze, and they would do like a freeze frame shot on the character, and they would have these like sort of not really statistics, but things about the character up on the screen. Maybe like a nickname, why they're called that, or their special skills, even if it wasn't really a skill. And I laughed every single time that a character was introduced because it was just so random. And that's like the perfect way to describe this movie, just random, because every character, some of the things that they do makes no sense, and they just do it just for a laugh. And I thought it was really funny and well done in the end, and I enjoyed it. It was a very cool thing that they did with the movie that they didn't do for the first two, and what can I say? It was funny. I laughed. Also, the score was surprisingly good. Oh my god, it made me enjoy the movie a lot more than I thought I would. And I know I've said that for a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this movie, but that's because it's true. And the score made you care about scenes that maybe were really stupid, especially when Vin Diesel was maybe doing it with another character. Like scenes like that you wouldn't normally care about, especially in a mechanic movie. But then that like the soundtrack made up for it, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, here's just a scene to show like the character has more in him than just violence and just this, and just killing and just doing all this badass stuff. And I thought it was very cool, and I enjoyed it a lot. So all in all, guys, I'm not a huge fan of this franchise. It's not one of my favorite franchises out there. It's definitely better than the Underworld series. Having seen more Underworld films than the Triple X, I would consider Triple X to be a better franchise than Underworld. But not just comparing it to Underworld, I mean like in general, Triple X is not really a good franchise. But it's a fun one, and you can watch over and over again. And I would say I liked it a lot better than I thought I would going into this film. So I did like this one a lot better than the first. I will have to go back to see the second one again to compare, because there are some very important things that happen in the third film that may correlate to the first and second. So with that in mind, guys, I am going to give this film, Triple X Return of Xander Cage, an average. And I think that's the best that I can do, and I'm really satisfied with that rating. I was going to give it a moderate, but thinking back on it, it really deserves an average, because you have to think about it for the franchise, not just like the movie in general and what else it can be compared to, but you have to think about it as a whole and in the franchise itself. So with that, thank you guys for watching. This is the Tempest Productions. I am Nick, and I will see you guys in the next video.